We're back on TYT Sports with the top 10 NBA players that are currently active. So Rick did yesterday. Ricky Strom does Dante Jones and Steph Curry. Steph Curry's not a top 10 player. That's asinine, and most people know that. Now, I decided, hey, I want to make my top 10, but it does go against something that I was talking about just last NBA season, which makes me a giant hypocrite, which is I don't like top 10s. I like tiers, because I think tiers and that whole system is way more fair to actually ranking players. Because what's so funny is when I posted the top 10 and then 4 players that I thought were really close, there's no winning with the internet ever. It's impossible. It's a whole cereal bowl full of L's is pretty much what I have to eat when I post anything related to a top 10, except for like 3 people who will go, I agree. You go, I now have to like the tweet. Here's some of the responses. Intern Zach, Lonzo didn't even crack the top 10. True. How far off is Blake? As in Blake Griffin, I said Blake Bortles, bottom 10. And then a lot of people have like Steph better than Harden, Harden better than Steph, Russell Westbrook better than Harden, Harden better than Steph and Westbrook, Chris Paul better than all three. So my top 10 in order is LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and then James Harden, Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, which a lot of people get really mad about. Let's say you think Steph Curry is better than James Harden or Russell Westbrook is better than Steph Curry. You're arguing one position. There's no criminal injustice if Steph Curry's 5 in my book and James Harden's 4. I'll explain why in a second. But there is more of an injustice if you have like Steph Curry at 1 and Kevin Durant at 10. Like there would be a major injustice to the world of sports rankings. Number 7, Giannis. Number 8, Chris Paul. Number 9, Jimmy Butler. And number 10, Anthony Davis. The 4 that I found really tough, really the 2 I found really tough not to add into the top 10 were John Wall and Karl Anthony Towns. And I think that 10th spot, 9th spot, they could be interchangeable, hence why a tier system makes so much more sense here. And then Draymond Green and surprisingly Nikola Jokic is not too far off. And by the end of the season, there's gonna be a whole different conversation about him and I think players like Porzingis, depending on if the Knicks could get some level of stability going on in the organization and not throw all their Subway repair money at Tim Hardaway Jr. Most people don't have a problem with LeBron James and Kevin Durant 1 and 2, so I don't think I really need to explain that much there. Kawhi Leonard as number 3, I don't think there's much to explain that way either. In terms of being two-way players, all 3 of them play both sides of the ball, and all 3 of them have tremendous playmaking ability to lead their teams. They are superstars in every right, in every definition of the word. Statistics, we can jump into them. I'll throw a few up on the page for you, but it's more the middle of the pack that gets so much debate. Russell Westbrook was the MVP last year, and I was 110% on board with Russell Westbrook being the MVP, but in terms of ranking players, I think there's a major difference between MVP and who the top 10 players in the league are and why one player might be better than another. Because the MVP isn't necessarily an award that goes to the best player, and it's also an award that doesn't necessarily go to the most valuable player. I just use how most NBA MVP voters vote to kind of categorize as to why. The triple doubles were remarkable, but don't forget James Harden was also a rebound and a half short, a rebound shy of also averaging a triple double. He had arguably the greatest offensive season ever. And I gotta say, Harden's team was obviously way worse on paper than Steph Curry's. James Harden's a playmaker. He was able to it's the D'Antoni point guard system, as Andre Snellings has written in his Hoops Lab columns before. It happened with Steve Nash, it even happened with Jeremy Lin to a certain extent. It's James Harden's array of attacks and his ability to, 1, get to the rim and constantly get to the foul line, which is frustrating, but still, he always finds a way, no matter what, on almost every possession, to have a hand in them scoring. And Westbrook too, but the inefficiency of Russell Westbrook puts him behind James Harden. Steph Curry just last year and his efficiency numbers compared to his MVP, his unanimous MVP season, also dropped off. So I'm really putting Harden above both of them, not purely on efficiency, but just in terms of how it is not just purely on efficiency. And again, a lot of people say defense has such a major effect on the game, and of course it does. But I do think when you're James Harden, Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, all 3 of you, not necessarily the best defenders in your position. Chris Paul is better at defense than all 3 of you combined. So if you want to do it on the defensive scale, then Chris Paul should be ahead of all of you. And I could talk to Shane Young NBA, and he'll put out an absolutely excellent case as to why Chris Paul isn't better than, not just better than all three of these point guards, but he's the second or third greatest point guard in the history of the game. And I'll throw up some of those numbers as well. But that's very heavily based on advanced statistics, and also, of course, if you watch Chris Paul, I do think he stalls offenses just a little bit, and I'm curious how it's going to work out with James Harden in Houston. I think it's close to a taste of what we could have gotten if there wasn't basketball reasons with Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant. You have a volume scorer in Kobe. You would have had Chris Paul in the backcourt. At that time, he was just a little bit faster, a little bit quicker on the first step, slightly more explosive. Now he's just smarter, so he's able to still create space and create his own shot. It just takes a little bit more time, and we're going to see what happens with the knock on Chris Paul being the over dribbling, or the ability to just kind of, or not, the inability to move the offense as quickly as maybe Mike D'Antoni would like, or the opposite will occur, and all of a sudden we're going to see Flash Gordon, Chris Paul, and James Harden is going to look unstoppable. All right, now as for Giannis, Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler, and Anthony Davis. I'm big on Giannis Antetokounmpo. I've been since he came into the league. This freak athlete who can stretch the floor, possibly touch both baselines at once, who plays point guard and brings in this European skill set and that European style of movement in the NBA. Giannis has taken the leap every single season. He's only 22 years old. He's about to be 23 in his 5th year in the NBA. And like a lot of players, Kawhi, Leonard, Paul George being two of them immediately off the top of my head, they were able to take that from the 3rd year to the 4th year. There was a major gap. Anthony Davis started to do this too, but he just never can stay healthy. Giannis has played 71, 79, and 80 games in the last 3 seasons, and he's doing it under 36 minutes a game, where it's ridiculous, man. His numbers across the board, he averaged 23, 8.8 rebounds, and 5.4 assists on top of 1.6 steals and 1.9 blocks. And not to get too heavy on the numbers, he shot 52% from the field and 27% from 3. But if you remember, Giannis said this summer he was going to work on a 3-point shot. He thinks it's the one thing he hasn't unlocked yet. Could you imagine if a 52% efficiency shooter got his 3-point percentage above 35%, which is fine for NBA standards nowadays? He only took 2.5 threes a game. If he does the same thing this year and he can knock down 1 instead of half of 1 a game, we're talking a very scary player. And the Bucks themselves, they took it to the Raptors. They lost in 6 games, if I'm correct. But they're a young team that is going to be led by such a unique player. I love that even on Basketball Reference. Position: shooting guard and small forward and point guard. They don't know where to put him. So number 34 from the Bucks comes in, yes, above Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler, and Anthony Davis, because I think this year you're going to really see that come to fruition. Jimmy Butler also has a case as an MVP candidacy, possibly going into this season because of the team he has, and just the idea of Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and that fun team. Who else? Jeff Teague was picked up as point guard there for the Minnesota Timberwolves. For Chris Paul, again, I'm going to default back to Shane Young. I want to pull up his reasoning as to why, and man, does Shane Young take a lot of heat on Twitter. I'm giving him a shout out for this. I also think he fights with them on purpose because I think he enjoys it. I mean, there's some people get a rise out of it. I don't think it really annoys him too much because he is a talented young writer and he's somebody who lays out his case statistically, and that's important because he's not just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks in a hot take form. But Chris Paul ranks in like the top 3 in almost every single point guard statistic compared to even point guards in history, so the Stocktons of the world, the Magic Johnsons of the world. He's right up there amongst them. And then the biggest thing against Chris Paul is, what about the playoffs? What about Chris Paul's playoffs? It's tough because the Clippers were they missed their window. But I do think there is still one more shot for Chris Paul to get past that hump, and I think we'll start talking about him differently. I know John Stockton made the NBA Finals a couple times, I believe. but he never won it. It's a difference. He also had Karl Malone. If you gave Chris Paul Karl Malone, I'm very sure he would also get to the NBA Finals as one of the best scorers in NBA history. So, if not the NBA Finals, at least the Western Conference Finals. Blake's always injured. The team had nobody who can create. It's just that they missed their window to make their run at the NBA postseason, and they also threw some games in very Clippers fashion. Like the Rockets series up, well, they blow a 3-1 lead, they're up 3-1, and the Rockets came back on them. Not good. All right, so the ones who just missed, let's see. That was who? John Wall. I feel like I should have John Wall in there. I feel like we need a top 10 and then 10A, B, C, D, so somebody can't be left off the list. But now as for tiers, look how much better this looks, right? I think this makes way more sense, and we should start ranking them. So you need a tier 1. You need to separate the best players in the NBA from the rest of the pack. So that is LeBron James and Kevin Durant. And some people should say Kawhi Leonard should be in that tier. No problem. Not a problem. I don't have him there just yet. Even though defensively, almost every reason to be. People like they talk Kawhi Leonard's the best two-way player in the league. Don't sleep on Kevin Durant's defensive abilities, especially in transition, cutting through passing lanes, creating. Besides the fact that he has quick hands and he gets his steals in his games, he's able to move the ball up in transition when if he's not necessarily the point guard bringing it up. Point being is he can find Draymond Green, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, who are down the court for not touchdown passes a la Kevin Love, but he still moves it forward and with simplicity after creating a turnover. And if he's not that guy, he's gunning down the court. And again, his length makes it really tough for anybody to keep up because he's 7 feet tall and no one knows this because he's listed at 6'9" for some unfair reason. And then LeBron James, the case, do I need to lay it out? I don't think so. So tier 2, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul. Whoa, you have the top 10 rankings. You have Giannis ahead of Chris Paul, but in tier 2 you have but tiers are different. Tiers are different because you have to look at more the full body of work, I think, with the tiers in itself. And I think that it's not the same type of ranking as the top 10. And then tier 3, Giannis, Jimmy Butler, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns, John Wall, and Draymond Green. And that's all I got because I haven't gotten past like the top 14-ish players in the NBA. And a lot of people are gonna say, how could you have Paul George in tier 4? I don't know, you saw what happened in Indy last year. What do you want to do? He's gonna play better this year with Russell Westbrook, I'm sure, but he's got to prove that if he wants to be a tier 3 guy, in my book, in my dumb opinion, for whatever reason you guys are still watching. So we'll do tier 4, 5, and 6 soon. It's midsummer, baseball season's in full effect, and I'm talking about tiers because I miss talking about the NBA. I want to talk about it nonstop and always because I love basketball, and ball is life. So do you agree with my tiers? Do you think the tier system is better? It obviously is. It's way more fair because then you're not putting necessarily one ahead of the other. If you're in the tier together, then you are of that ability. Comment below, like, favorite, and subscribe. We'll see you next time.